History often feels like a grand stage for epic clashes of empires, ideologies, and ambitions. We think of world-changing battles and legendary generals shaping the course of nations. But sometimes, history is just plain weird. It's a theater of the absurd, where the reasons for conflict are so bizarre, so petty, or so utterly ridiculous, you have to wonder if you're reading a comedy script instead of a history book. From stolen buckets to runaway pigs, the triggers for war can be stranger than fiction. Today, we're diving into the annals of absurdity to uncover the weirdest wars ever fought. First on our list is a conflict that sounds like something out of a children's story, but with real-world consequences: the War of the Oaken Bucket. This strange saga unfolded in 1325 between the rival Italian city-states of Bologna and Modena. The official cause? A group of Modenese soldiers snuck into Bologna and swiped a wooden bucket from the city well. Yes, a bucket. Bologna, deeply offended by this grand theft bucket, demanded its return. Modena refused, and this seemingly trivial dispute escalated into a full-blown war. The resulting Battle of Zappolino was shockingly brutal, with thousands of casualties on both sides, all because one city-state refused to return another's well bucket. Ultimately, Modena won the battle, and, to add insult to injury, they kept the bucket. To this day, a replica of the infamous bucket is proudly displayed in Modena, a wooden trophy from one of history's most pointless conflicts. Next, we travel to Central America for the appropriately named Football War, also known as the 100-Hour War. In 1969, tensions were already simmering between the neighboring countries of El Salvador and Honduras. Issues like immigration and land reform had created a powder keg of resentment. The spark that finally lit the fuse was a series of 3 World Cup qualifying soccer matches between the two nations. Each game was marred by riots, violence, and intense nationalistic fervor. After the final decisive match, which El Salvador won, diplomatic ties were severed, and the Salvadoran military launched an attack on Honduras. The ensuing conflict lasted for about 4 days and resulted in thousands of deaths and displaced over 100,000 people. While the soccer games weren't the sole cause, they were the dramatic final trigger for a war that had been brewing for years. It serves as a stark reminder of how national pride, even in sports, can fuel very real and devastating conflict. The war ended with a ceasefire, but the deep-seated issues took many more years to resolve. Now for a war that proves even the smallest, most insignificant dispute can spiral out of control. Welcome to the Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896, which holds the Guinness World Record for the shortest war in history. The conflict began after the pro-British Sultan of Zanzibar died and his cousin Khalid bin Barhash seized power without British approval. The British Empire, wanting to maintain its influence, had a different candidate in mind. They issued an ultimatum to Khalid: step down from the throne by 9 a.m. on August 27th, or face the consequences. Khalid, confident in his palace defenses and his few thousand troops, refused to back down. At precisely 9:02 a.m., British warships in the harbor opened fire on the Sultan's palace. The bombardment was swift and overwhelming. By 9:40 a.m., the palace was in ruins, the Sultan's flag was down, and the war was over. The entire conflict lasted a mere 38 minutes. It was a ridiculously one-sided affair that demonstrated the immense power of the British Royal Navy and the folly of defying it, resulting in one of history's most comically brief military engagements. Our fourth entry takes us to the Pacific Northwest of the United States for a dispute that's as comical as its name, the Pig War. In 1859, the San Juan Islands were territory claimed by both the United States and Great Britain. This ambiguity meant that both American settlers and British employees of the Hudson's Bay Company lived on the islands. The peace was shattered one day when an American farmer named Lyman Cutler found a large black pig eating his potatoes. This wasn't the first time, and in a moment of frustration, Cutler shot and killed the pig. It turned out the pig belonged to a British employee who demanded compensation. The situation quickly escalated from a neighborhood dispute to an international incident. The British threatened to arrest Cutler, and the American settlers called for military protection. Before long, both nations had sent warships and soldiers to the tiny island, facing off over the death of a single pig. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. The local commanders on both sides agreed not to start a war, and for the next 12 years, the island was under joint military occupation, till an international commission peacefully awarded the islands to the United States. The only casualty of the entire war was the pig itself. It remains a perfect example of how a tiny, almost laughable incident can bring two major powers to the brink of conflict. Finally, we arrive at the infamous Great Emu War of Australia. In 1932, Western Australia was facing a different kind of invasion. Over 20,000 emus, large flightless birds, were migrating into farmlands after their breeding season. These birds were wreaking havoc on wheat crops, which were already struggling due to the Great Depression. The farmers, many of them former soldiers, pleaded for government assistance to deal with the feathered menace. In a decision that seems baffling in hindsight, the Australian military was deployed to combat the emus. A major in the Royal Australian Artillery was sent with 2 soldiers and 2 EO, Lewis machine guns, to wage war on the bird population. What followed was a complete and utter humiliation for the military. The emus proved to be surprisingly difficult targets. They were fast, resilient, and had an uncanny ability to disperse into small groups when fired upon, making them hard to hit. The soldiers used thousands of rounds of ammunition with very few results. After a couple of weeks of utter failure and some deeply embarrassing press coverage, the military withdrew. The emus had, for all intents and purposes, won the war. The media had a field day, mocking the army's inability to defeat a flock of birds. The Great Emu War has gone down in history as a bizarre testament to nature's resilience and a humbling lesson for one of the world's armies. From poultry to pigs, these stories show that the path to war isn't always paved with grand designs. Sometimes it's paved with absurdity. These conflicts, while often comical in their origins, had real consequences, reminding us that even the strangest chapters of history are worth remembering. If you enjoyed this journey into the weird side of warfare, be sure to subscribe to Historical Repo for more deep dives into the strange and fascinating stories from our past